Warning: when filming this video, I didn't realize at the time that my earrings flashed in the light. I apologize to anyone sensitive to flashing. Please watch this video at your own discretion. Hello fellow fic writers! Kudos for clicking on this video. My name is Cora Maria and I'm here to help you write and post your dream fanfiction. So when it comes to writing advice about POV or point of view, it's typically given on the assumption that you're trying to write an original story for publication. That's why I wanted to create this video. I want to explain different POV styles through the lens of fanfiction. There are certain ways that we can and do use POV that are different from original or commercial fiction. And there are certain aspects unique to our medium that we need to consider when choosing which POV style is right for our story. Prologue. What is point of view? To put it simply, point of view is the perspective through which your story is told. Is it narrated by the protagonists themselves, or is the reader positioned as a passive observer? You may think that there are only two main POV styles in storytelling, first and third person. If you're a little bold, you might consider second person as well, and you should. In this two-part video series, I will be covering 5 POV styles and their unique relationship to fanfiction. These are third person limited, third person rotating, third person omniscient, first person, and second person, which has a very unique place in the world of fanfiction. Since we have a lot to cover, this video will be the first of a two-part series. In part 1, this part will be focusing on the 3 kinds of third-person narration, starting with Chapter 1, Third Person Limited. This may be third-person narration in its most basic form, but it is not to be underestimated. Third-person limited POV is when the story is told from the perspective of a single character, but in third person. Instead of I went to the store, the narration reads as they went to the store. What is third-person limited ideal for? Character studies. This is when you emphasize a canon character's internal struggles. There's more focus on emotion and monologue rather than action and conflict. Telling a story from a limited, biased perspective. For example, maybe you want to redeem a character who is part of a corrupt organization. You want to show their slow progression from initially justifying their involvement to questioning it, and then escaping its influence altogether. Mysteries! Third Person Limited is great for any story that involves investigating the root of the story's conflict. This is because the reader knows only as much as the POV character. If you love writing plot twists, there's a good chance that no POV style will serve you better than Third Person Limited. It's much easier to sprinkle in foreshadowing without revealing too much if your fic is centered on the one character who doesn't know nor have reason to suspect the truth. That way, the reveal feels shocking and convincing at the same time. What is Third Person Limited not so good for? Dramatic irony. This is when the audience knows something that the POV character or characters do not. If you're telling everything through one character's eyes, then how are you meant to establish that dramatic irony? Sometimes the source material establishes it for you, but if you want to base it on your own original ideas, then you're better off using third person rotating or omniscient. If you want to represent multiple perspectives, especially if they are in conflict with your POV character, then sure, you can have other characters challenge the protagonist's worldview, but your protagonist will always be biased and your readers will most likely side or at least empathize most with your character's way of seeing things. If you want to portray each side equally, then multiple POVs might be what your story needs instead, not third person limited. How do you write third person limited well? Make sure you understand your POV character inside and out, whether they're a canon character or an original one. This will help you create an immersive narrative voice that feels authentic to the POV character. You should also always consider things exactly how your character perceives them. For example, instead of saying that someone is sneaking up behind your protagonist, describe the sound of their sneaky little footsteps. I know this POV style may seem, well, limiting, but I actually think this version is the most beginner friendly. If you're a writer who tends to have a lot of ambitious concepts, characters, and plot threads that tend to get tangled together, then this POV style will teach you how to write a focused storyline that puts your protagonist first. Once you've mastered third person limited, this next POV style will come naturally to you. Chapter 2. Third person rotating. This is when you have multiple POV characters, but they're restricted to their respective chapters or even scene. For example, character A is the POV of scene 1 and character B is the POV of scene 2, and then in scene 3, we're back to character A. What is third person rotating ideal for? Showing and making a case for multiple conflicting perspectives. If you enjoy exploring grey morality or personality clashes, then this would be a great POV style to use. If you're writing a story that involves two or more characters having internal arcs that affect each other, such as enemies to friends or enemies to lovers, then rotating POV can work especially well. Do you love the dramatic irony of third-person omniscient, but also the intimate nature of third-person limited? Then this is the perfect narration style for you. Using various POVs means that you're able to reveal information to your readers that other characters do not know. More on that in a bit. What is third-person rotating not so good for? The main risk with rotating POV is that it can cause your story to balloon into a much larger version of itself. Instead of each character's POV complementing the rest, they're all preoccupied with their own storylines, and thus end up cannibalizing each other's page time. If you find yourself adding in more and more POVs, then it might be best if you put some limits on yourself and consider which ones are truly necessary. Sometimes you only need one POV to tell the best version of your story. Garbage truck, why? How do you write third person rotating well? Keep the number of POV characters to an absolute minimum and make sure that they participate in the same plot as much as possible. When they aren't together, their plots should still relate to each other somehow. For example, one of your POV characters might be investigating a city that was abandoned overnight, while another POV character goes to confront the villain, only to meet a horde of brainwashed residents, the residents of the abandoned city that went missing! Each POV character should have a different internal voice. What metaphors or idioms would they use? What are their thought processes like? A hard-to-impress princess might describe a ballroom as having dull decor, while a peasant who grew up on the street would probably consider it to be the most garishly fancy place they've ever seen. Finally, and most important, establish whose POV we're in as soon as possible. The easiest way to do this is to just write the character's name at the top of the scene, but really you can establish it through context clues alone. For example, you could describe your POV character sighing in exasperation and then follow it up with a sentence of, frustrated internal monologue in the same paragraph. Chapter 3, Third Person Omniscient. This is where chapters or scenes aren't told from any one POV. The narrator just happens to know everything and is able to show or hide whatever is convenient to the story. They're able to peer into or veer away from the thoughts of all characters and describe whatever they like about their surroundings, regardless of whether or not the characters are aware of or paying attention to it. Sound like a sweet deal? Don't be so sure. From my observation, this is the default used by most fledgling fic writers. It's hard to tell if using this style is an intentional choice on their part, or if they're just writing everyone's character thoughts or describing whatever they want just because. What is third person omniscient ideal for? Dramatic irony! It is so easy for an omniscient narrator to share some crucial bit of information that the characters need to know, but do not for whatever reason. Watching the characters operate in ignorance is an excellent source of suspense. Similarly, omniscient POV allows you to do the opposite. Conceal information that the characters know from your audience. For example, when it looks like your villain has backed your hero into a corner, the hero reveals some grand plan that they had all along. Does the source material of your fandom happen to include an omniscient character, such as a deity or god? Then why not tell your story in their POV? It also means that you can sprinkle in some first-person POV without it feeling out of place. Finally, one of the greatest benefits of third-person omniscient is that it allows your own writing style to shine through, because you don't have to worry about clashing with the inner voices of your characters. What is third-person omniscient not so good for? Omniscient POV will almost always be straight up with the facts, so it doesn't really work for unreliable narrators. Unless you're doing the omniscient deity thing and the deity is a bastard. Like third person rotating, this POV style puts you at higher risk of series or story bloat. It also places extra distance between the reader and the characters, since we're not witnessing the story unfold through their eyes. If you want to create a more intimate relationship between the reader and the POV character or characters, then third person rotating, limited, or first person would be the better choice for you. How do you write third person omniscient well? First of all, since this is not an easy POV style to write, and it's the least immersive of them all, I want you to consider all other POV styles and ask yourself if your story can be told in one of those instead. If none of them have the features necessary to tell the best version of your story, but omniscient POV does, then go right ahead. You should also study the common pitfalls of omniscient POV. For example, how to avoid head hopping. This is when the narrative rapidly jumps between the thoughts and observations of two or more characters, thus causing confusion. Instead, you should learn how to ease your reader in and out of the characters' heads. And finally, inject your personal writing style. The main draw of omniscient narration is that it isn't constrained by any POV character. Let's say your protagonist is rather dry and blunt in canon. In third person limited, a flowery, poetic style would feel wildly out of place. In omniscient narration, however, it could be a charming or humorous contrast. Interlude. To be continued. And that's the end of part 1 of this POV duology. I've covered fanfiction's favourite POV styles, so maybe I should stop here. But I won't. we still have the ever controversial first and second person POV types to cover. Their reputation in the fanfiction community is spotty, sure, but I still think they deserve to be covered because of how unique their applications are. If you don't want to miss part 2, then make sure you've subscribed and hit the bell icon. I'll be back soon with some more dreamy fanfiction tips, but in the meantime, happy fic writing!